Hello, my name is Ben.
And I'm Erik.
And we are your hosts of the Too Vague podcast this week. One word, two hosts, stories, trivia, and video games. We've got a special guest from Imaginary Game Studio. Erik, wonderful to have you on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me, man. I don't know who would want to talk to me for an hour, but here we are.
I would, actually. I don't know who would want to talk to me for an hour either. So how are you doing? Anything exciting going on in your life?
Anything exciting?
Yeah.
Just, the routine day-to-day of being a father of an 18-month-old and designing video games. And, something that I wish somebody had told me when I was 15 or thinking about getting into game design. I wish somebody had been like, you know how many spreadsheets are involved in that? You don't really realize until you start doing it that project management is project management and software development is software development.
Any pivot tables going on?
I'm terrible at Excel, but it's one of the most, it's an astonishingly powerful program.
Oh, yeah.
But
my father absolutely loved Excel so much that he used it for things it wasn't designed to be used for. My stepmother and father would go on vacations out of the country. They would do travel log books for their friends. Anne would do most of the writing, and then Dad would put them all together with the photos that they had. Dad did all of his typesetting in Excel.
What did he do for a living?
Well, he was a business guy, business analyst. Like, that's what he...
Okay, so that makes sense that he would be comfortable in that. Like, I do everything I can to not use Excel. Even if someone's like, hey, this needs to be organized in a table, I'm like, okay, how do I do this in Word? You used to work at Intuit, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
I feel like that was in your blood. You were destined to end up there with the man that you're describing to me right now.
Maybe. He still asked me why I was hanging out with those freaks at the coffee shop. He did it jokingly, not like he's not attacking me. He's like, after we're done here, you can go spend some time with those freaks at the coffee shop. So that's what's going on with you. Spreadsheets in game design. Anything new as far as Rogue Climber is concerned that you're working on?
Yeah, a little bit. Christian, my business partner and the lead developer and designer and literally everything else, every other role in the company. He is currently in Japan, and he spends a few months every year over there with his girlfriend. Notoriously hard to communicate with someone on the other side of the planet. So he's been feeding me basically just ideas that he's having about the game. Essentially, I exist to just tell him if I think they're bad ideas.
Okay, so you're a magic 8-ball. That's what you are.
Sure. It's a fantastic role to have. I'm completely functionally useless outside of narrative design and gameplay design.
When Christian's on the show, I'll ask him, but I don't think he'll feel the same way.
So, well, we'll see, I guess. Don't preempt him with this. Don't tell him that the show's being recorded. I want to see what he says without the notice, get the authentic answer from him. But right now we're talking about things that we're pretty confident with the gameplay. So we took Rogue Climber to PAX.
Yeah.
Yeah, we ran into each other. And I played your lovely assistant, and we played Path of Exile together.
Yep, that was fun.
I know. I think you need to send me a 1099 now or something. But
it's all pro bono. That's all. It's all pro bono. I probably should have said that up front.
That's okay. Yeah, I understand. Just the time together was meaningful.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So Christian and I were, whenever you're making something, you never quite know how it's going to be received.
Right.
And if you did, then nobody would make anything that was bad. And that just doesn't happen. Everybody makes stuff that doesn't do well. And so a lot of it is just kind of like letting your intuition guide you and hoping for the best in a lot of instances and being open-minded enough to learn from what playtesters are telling you. And we learned a lot of interesting things at PAX. The game is really hard, which we did expect, but what we didn't expect is that difficulty really resonated with young people, ages 13 and under.
We're saying like Gen Alpha, right?
Whatever they're called these days.
Like the ones that are into all the skibbity toilet stuff and whatnot.
Well, yeah, that's kind of, you're exactly right. And I'm sitting there at PAX like going like, well, how the heck do you explain this? Was it you, Ben, or was it someone else who pointed out they're part of the Roblox generation?
Oh, no, that was someone else.
They're playing these difficult Roblox maps, and they're coming up on these, and I've only played Roblox like twice in my entire life, but they really seem to gravitate towards the type of experience that we're putting together. That's all to say that we're pretty happy with the core gameplay experience. And right now, we're brainstorming ways to fine tune some of the rougher edges a little bit, because behind the scenes of that demo that you saw, which was, for those listening, it was a completely playable single level of Rogue Climber. What's funny is behind the scenes, there was nothing working. The main menu barely worked. None of the narrative stuff that we're planning had been implemented yet. And so there's still a lot to do, but you kind of have to use some smoke and mirrors to make it look like a comprehensive gameplay experience when you're somewhere like PAX. So we're still working on all the ancillary stuff. What does the abilities select screen look like? Are we happy with the UI? Or how do certain gameplay surprises that we have planned for later levels, do they play well with the abilities that we plan on giving you?
Right, balancing.
You know, these are all things that we're still... Yeah, exactly. It's all that quality assurance fine-tuning that's going on right now. So poor Christian, he'll send me like the longest Discord message you've ever seen with all his thoughts and stuff like that, and I'll read it over and be like, yeah, honestly, man, this all sounds really good. And that'll be my response to him. And then a week later, I'll get another real long Discord message with all these ideas and stuff like that. And I'll be like, yeah, let's try it out. So he's throwing ideas my way, and I'm just like, sure.
That is an interesting type of development. When you saw the response at PAX, you saw you were going the correct direction. Or is that the assessment? It's like, okay, yeah, we got something here. This is good.
Correct. It's an interesting word to use there. Correct is something that resonates with some multitude of humans. And in that instance, yeah, absolutely. We were like, and I think this goes for every game dev. Every game I've ever worked on, I've kind of felt this. There's a part of me where it hits the market. You got your fingers crossed and you're like, please no 48 on Metacritic. Like, please, I'll settle for like a 65, but please no, don't make this a legendary failure.
What about a 7?
That's, yeah. You know how I feel about 7s, but I would have definitely taken that.
Okay.
At PAX, the first guy to come play Rogue Climber, I think he played it for maybe 20 seconds. And he stood up. He was very respectful, but he stood up and he said, oh, it's way too janky for me. And he walked away. And I looked at Christian and I was like, oh, it's going to be a long couple days, I think.
What does that mean, janky? Seriously. What does that mean?
The controls, well, you played it. The controls make you feel a little heavy. Like we tried to capture the lumbering nature of actual human movement. You don't feel like Mario when you're jumping between platforms.
Right.
You feel weight.
That's part of it, though, I think.
I think so, too. And games have this language encoded into them. And when you hand it to someone and they're expecting the game to metaphorically speak Mario and it doesn't, it's a huge turnoff, which I understand. And Christian and I debated that back and forth. He made his own player movement controller, and I gave him feedback. I'm like, look, I think it might be too heavy. If you commit to a direction, it's really hard to change momentum. In a game about precise platforming, does that make the best experience? And he would tweak some things, and we worked on it. But he stood by. He goes, I want this to feel kind of weighty. Yeah, that was literally the first feedback we got at PAX. And I was like, oh, geez.
I'm sorry, did you say kind of weighty?
Yeah, exactly.
Weighty, okay. Can you say it again? Weighty?
Weighty?
Because you cut out. So it just sounds like it's kind of 80. That's what...
You haven't gotten to the Tron level yet.
No, that's going to be the best one.
That's right. We better get developing it then.
Because I am your target audience. No.
We've been saying that all along. We have a cardboard cutout of you in the Imaginary Game Studios offices. And we're like, this is the persona we're targeting here.
When I played the level, it was a lot of fun for me. And you guys said that I did pretty well. I think I was good at it because of arcades. I'm the arcade generation. Maybe it's a weird sort of like split thing. You got the Roblox generation who likes hard, and me who feels that it's arcadey. Hard is a subjective term that you put on something, right? So I don't know.
You think the millennials we all grew soft gamer-wise?
I don't want this to be a controversial show. I really don't. I don't make judgments. Everyone likes their games. Very specific, like people will like certain types of games. That's why there's so much variety out there.
Again, my metric for success was having anybody sit down and play it and like it. And that's not an indie thing. Like I said, I felt the same way when working on Madden and writing stories for Diablo. It's just, that anxious neuroticism. But it was really great to see some of these young kids. There was this one kid, gosh, I cannot remember his name, but he was really little. I think he was maybe like 6 or 7. his parents took him to our area because, we don't have lines wrapped around the building like Path of Exile or anyone. And he played Oldtimer for a good long time. And his parents kind of like, okay, let's go do something else. And they showed up again like 2 hours later. And they said, yeah, we waited in line for Pokemon. We waited in line for Mario or something else. I can't remember exactly. And the whole time he's like, I want to go back and play the jumping game. And I was like, man, that's fantastic. If you get something out of this, then our time has not been wasted, which is nice.
It's always good to get that kind of feedback. Very cool. So I have been playing games. Have you been playing any games? You're probably just playing the game.
I have about 40 minutes a day right now. I'm not accountable to anyone but myself. And just yesterday, I platinumed Black Myth Wukong.
Oh, nice. I want that to go on sale, and then I'll buy it probably.
I was watching gameplay trailers of it, and it didn't look that compelling to me.
Okay.
It looked like a good game. I saw it and was like, looks fine, but it didn't reach out and grab me. And my older brother, he has always been a big lover of Eastern culture. He never recommends games, like ever. Even if he likes it, he'll just say he liked it. He'll never say, hey, you got to buy this.
Right.
Well, I got a phone call from him. He's like, you got to buy this. And I remember thinking like, fine, I'll just do it to appease him because this is so rare. And I played, just kind of speeding through it for about 45 minutes, not really taking my time. I'm like, let me just get to the end of it so I can have the geek out conversation with him and appease him. And about 45 minutes into it, I'm like, is this game kind of great? Like, yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with this, a lot more than I thought I would. And like I said, I platinumed it yesterday, so.
I only platinum games that I enjoy. I mean, it's like, what's the point if you don't? I mean, there are people out there who like to accumulate the platinums. Are you one of those?
No, but I do have one caveat to what you just described. You don't want this show to be controversial, so we don't have to go down this path, but I am going to present it.
Okay.
I platinumed Cyberpunk 2077 and the DLC so that I can say that I think it's a bad game without people accusing me of not having experienced it.
Huh. That's really interesting. I never thought of it in that sense. But do you have to? How much do you have to play of it? I played through 4 times, one for each of the storyline endings in the first, on the PlayStation 4, by the way.
Oh, ouch.
Honestly, it was not that bad. All this stuff that people were saying about it, it was not horrible. There was a certain point, like towards the end of the game, when there started to be more and more enemies simultaneously, and I was using my hacking to pick out all the people inside the building. Then it started to get a little choppy. But that was the first time it even did that for me. So I enjoyed it for what it was. Didn't play Witcher, so I don't know what to compare it to.
This is another thing that I get. I've had people say, well, you're just a CD Projekt Red hater. The Witcher 3 is my favorite game ever.
Okay.
And I bought Cyberpunk with gusto. I was like, this is going to change everything for games.
Mm-hmm.
I had a PlayStation 5 at the time that I bought it, day of when it came out. And it ran fine, but I hated it so much I returned it anyway.
Huh.
I was so disenchanted. I felt so let down. We might have to do another podcast appearance for this one. This is a big topic.
We can break here, but it's a good segue into the game that I've been playing, SlavicPunk Oldtimer, which I wanted to talk to you about because you, as an author, back in the Wayback Machine when you were at Sports Illustrated, how long did you work at Sports Illustrated as a writer? And was it for their magazine or was it for online?
No, it was for an online. It was a subsidiary. Gosh, what was it called back then? I was a staff writer for, I think, what became Football Nation, if I'm remembering correctly. I also worked as a sports writer for the now defunct Tampa Tribune, which was like a 128-year-old newspaper or something that I was lucky enough to be there when the doors closed. Spent a lot of time writing stories about that. How does that loop into SlavicPunk?
It does, because I am writing a review of it now, and I'm trying to figure out what to focus on, and I'm hoping you can give me some pointers as a writer. You know that I started a Substack for these review codes that I've been getting, and I've been putting a lot of effort into writing good material, stuff that is, I guess, high quality. I mean, as much as I can make it high quality. Have you read any of the articles so far?
I have, actually. And if high quality is what your target, I think you're doing a fantastic job.
That's good. I'm I'm happy. That didn't sound very sincere, did it?
But I'm telling you, it's one of those, it's just like I was talking about with making games and showing them to people. No matter how much time and effort you put into those articles, you get them online and you're like, this is going to ruin me. No one's going to like this.
And your own worst critic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, the SlavicPunk Oldtimer, it's kind of a post-apocalyptic future. People have these types of gear and whatnot. It's described as an isometric shooter that's based upon the works of Mitchell. It's Michal, so it would be Michal.
Michelle? I have no idea how they pronounce it in Eastern Europe.
Yeah, he's Polish, so however they pronounce that. Michał Golkowski, a renowned Polish science fiction and fantasy books author who created this story of Janusz, who's a private investigator with a troubled past, now trying to solve an unexpected case revolving around a stolen data carrier while fighting his own inner demons, the urban gangs, and a nigh omnipotent corporation responsible for the downfall of the city he used to call his home. The original soundtrack is by this gentleman named Patrick Scalina, and that was the thing that really grabbed me. Very much sounded like, I don't know, it gave me film noir sort of hard-boiled cop vibes, and that's what the story gives me too. You've got your archetypes, you've got the damsel that comes and he's a heavy drinker, just all these different,
The classic setup.
It's fine to a point. It's isometric 3D, and that's okay, but it just, in playing it, it feels a little slow to me, and I don't know if that's because I've also been playing Hades 2 in early access. Maybe that has something to do with it, because that's a very fast feeling game that's also isometric 3D. But this involves guns more prominently. So you go through, you hack things, you look for items, pick up health, just the normal things. And the world, my gosh, they must have spent so much time on crafting this really beautiful looking world that you don't have to worry about any kind of clipping or anything. The environments are really well done. But the gameplay, that's where it starts to get repetitive for me. Like any cyberpunk type of game that you would expect, weapons and hacking, I would say it took me 4 or 5 hours to play through this game. Not very engaging. Mini games. What did you think of the mini game in Cyberpunk 2077? Like as far as the hacking?
I pretty much avoided it entirely.
At all costs?
Yeah.
Because I like that one more than this one. This one's kind of a timing, like concentric circles that you have to insert a pin into. It's just kind of a hurdle more than anything else. There's nothing riding on it. You just do it. It's not like if you don't pick the lock, you get some sort of negative thing that occurs. It just lets you try again.
Whenever I'm working on a design, and most of game design is stuff like that, right? People dream about designing like the macro experience of a game like Dragon Age or what have you. But most of the time,
Dragonage. It's called Dragonage.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Did you learn that on Blueski?
Yeah, I learned that on Blueski. I forgot to talk about Blueski. Do I sound Chicagoan when I say Blueski? Probably.
Absolutely. You spend most of your time designing little pocket experiences. Like whenever I'm doing one of those, whenever I seek feedback on a design, I always tell whoever's giving me feedback to imagine the Netflix menu on your TV or your phone or wherever. And I say, how annoying would it be to have to click a movie thumbnail to flip it over to see what movie it was? Like, wouldn't that just be the most infuriating waste of time? I always try to level set and say, if you get that vibe from what I've just given you, just throw it in the garbage and tell me to start it again. And for the lockpicking thing that you just described, like, what's the point? You're just tapping the thumbnail to see what's behind it. Just open the damn thing.
Exactly. If you're going to make me do something, have it pay off in some way. I mean, yeah, you get the thing that's inside whatever you're hacking, but it's not fun on its own. I think that's an important thing. It's got to be at least a little bit fun in some way.
Consumers are really good at discerning when a designed experience is wasting their time. We can kind of just feel it. It's almost like petting a dog the wrong way. You're playing something, you're like, why the hell am I doing this? if you failed that mini game, it would be more compelling to me if that reward was just gone from you forever. Then there's high stakes to the game.
Exactly. And that wouldn't impact too much because you collect these items. As I was playing, I collected so many items, ammunition for my different guns, which is limited yet plentiful, so you don't really have to worry about it. There's a place where you can customize your guns with whatever you find, and there is a sort of a store mechanism that you stumble upon at one point, but it doesn't really, you can't sell anything back. It seems like it's not fully done. It has a lot of good things in it, but it really just needed more work. And then the other part is the lack of localization. Now, I don't expect every single indie developer to localize for a specific audience. I understand it. The story is told in broken English. All the characters speak in this broken English, and there's a lot of profanity for the sake of just profanity. It might have been well written, and I don't know if this author wrote this at all or if it was just inspired by, but it just didn't feel like it flowed together for me. And that's disappointing because the music definitely fit every single scene. That's the communication method that you can nail that and it tells you how to feel, but the writing did none of that. And they also had these cartoony looking panels where I didn't think it really fit the style of the game nor the graphic style in the game. And then it ended up with a boss fight, which just was kind of ridiculous. I finally beat it, but it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. And then the conclusion is also lackluster. So
lacking in meaning.
It's one of those things where it's all in your mind. Sorry, spoiler alert.
Oh, jeez.
But anyway.
Well, while we're on spoilers, why is it called? It's called Oldtimer?
Yeah.
Why is it called?
Because you're the old man and everyone calls you Oldtimer because you're where the younger people are doing all the street punk kind of activities. But you also have a really hot girlfriend.
Which is
which
the dream, right?
I don't know. I mean, she talks about sex all the time, and as she's giving you her missions. This is the thing. She's your girlfriend, but she's also your client. I mean, come on. That is that's kind of a red flag, I would say. Wouldn't you?
Conflict of interest.
Yeah, a little bit. And she even talks you out of trusting your best friend, which is rough. There were little segments where the picture of someone was talking up in the corner and all this stuff that you would read to get the story, but it was too small. I have a large screen television, and it was still too small for me to actually see, and I bumped up the size of the font as high as I could make it, but didn't remedy anything.
So are you missing like important story beats?
Probably. I mean, I got little bits and pieces from squinting, but it wasn't fun enough to me to even care. It was just about getting on to the next level, which is sad because it has the feeling and the environment nailed. It just needed a little bit more development in the area of guns, how they work, how you can customize them, the items, shops, any kind of economy, because there was currency that you could spend on these things, but it didn't really come in handy. And I don't want to speculate as to why this was put out in its state. You know, I think some people will like it, but it just didn't hit the mark for me. And I think a lot of it had to do with the story not being compelling, the gameplay at the end of the day not being fun, even though the music really kept me going, which is strange, I think. But
has the studio made anything else?
We got a game here called Scanticide, but that's coming out. So yeah, this looks like it's the first one from this Red Square Games.
Honestly, what you've described for the game is a pretty promising assessment of a new amalgamation of creative people working together.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make anything, even if you've been working together for years and years and you know each other's tendencies. So the fact that they got so much right is a heartening thing. I would be interested to see what they come out with next.
Me too. Okay, so with my assessment of the broken English, when I was at PAX this year, I saw this game, a highway police simulator, which was made by a company that their previous game was an Autobahn police simulator. So this was supposed to take place in the US. And I asked the guy, boy, that really sounded Chicagoan, didn't it? So I asked the guy, I threw out my back, lifting big 50-pound bags of science diet. So I told the guy, I was like, have you seen Super Troopers? Because you really need to see that in order to make an accurate simulator. And he just was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I was like, okay. So you arrive at the scene, you throw down 3 cones that you pick out of the back of your car. There's no traffic moving at that point. Everyone's just stopped and sitting in their cars, just expressionless. You put down the 3 cones and then you start investigating the scene and you talk to these people and you're trying to figure out who was at fault. There were things in there that I was supposed to pick one of the options and it wasn't clear to me why I was picking the option and why that was the correct one. I don't know. It was maybe the translation. That was my assumption, was the translation. It wasn't done well. One of the things I saw was these things on the ground, which is evidence that I collected, which was drug crumbs. And I said, you might want to like drug residue or something along those lines, but drug crumbs, we don't call it that. And if you're making a simulator of the US highway, you want to consult with US police officers, I think.
Ideally, you'd want some approximation of what actually happens.
Yeah.
Drug crumbs, man. We've all been to college, right? Drug crumbs. You remember those days?
No. I was a nerd. Every once in a while I'd have a Zima, and that's about it.
Oh man. So you were talking about Chicago. I know we have a word to get to. Before we go there, I have the craziest Chicago story.
Okay. We're taking the circuitous route on our way to the word this week.
I knew this was going to be a good word because you and I cannot keep each other in check conversation here. I used to visit Chicago every fall or winter on business. I used to work for a nonprofit. This would have been 2017 or so. When we weren't working, me and my work group, we would just wander around. Chicago's a cool place.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all walking somewhere near, where's the Silver Bean located? What part of Chicago is that?
That's just outside of the Gold Coast. That's where the Art Institute is.
So we weren't there, but we were headed there. We're walking just on foot down the street and a lot of homeless people, right?
Right.
And there's this guy sitting by a traffic light, like greasy, emaciated dude. He's holding this sign and the sign says, I was stabbed 6 times last night. Any money would help. And I'm thinking to myself, that's creative as hell. I appreciate a good narrative to go along with this stuff.
Right.
But for some reason, I don't know what was wrong with me. It was very inhumane. But I went up to him and I said, if you can show me the knife wounds, I will give you $10. And he didn't say anything, but he kind of turned and with one free hand, he lifted up the back of his shirt. And there were 6 knife wounds that were the grossest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, my Lord.
And I gave him my money.
Yeah.
I did.
That's the thing. It's like, don't judge, man. That's a lesson.
Why didn't he go to the hospital?
Because he's homeless. I don't.
What are they going to repossess from him?
You see all these television shows where you've got people going to the homeless shelters. Some of them don't want to go to the hospital. They've got negative feelings about that. But I don't know.
This dude was like, no, don't take me to the ER. I have a great story to tell now to the people that are walking by.
Wow. That is Chicago. That is accurate.
It was so gross, man. I have a pretty strong stomach, and that one still hurts to think about.
This is a dad story. Got 2 dad stories so far this episode. He was in his car, and he looks a couple cars up, and he sees that there's this homeless man who looks like he's cleaning people's windows. People are just giving him money to get him away. And as he gets closer, Dad realizes that he's cleaning windows with a dead pigeon. And of course, he gets to his window and Dad says, if you even touch my window with that dead pigeon, I will blah, 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 blah. Right. So, yeah.
Did the guy do it? Did he touch the window?
No, my dad was a very large man, not someone you want to mess with. So,
where did he get a dead pigeon? I guess I was just off the street, but
Lower Wacker Drive, maybe. I mean, who knows? Paper towels, those are good. I mean, dead pigeon, I don't know.
It's enterprising, though, that he's using what he has.
It's true. Feathers, they're soft.
Right.
I don't know if they're absorbent, but who knows?
I think they might be the opposite of that, actually.
Yeah, I think they seem oily.
Yes.
They seem like they would do more damage to your windshield than they would do good. But now we have reached the word this week, circuitous. Let me just get right into the definition of circuitous. Am I pronouncing circuitous weird? Am I enunciating too much?
I think you're like the MC of the spelling bee right now, which is the right ethos.
Okay, good. Circuitous. You know what? Let's switch it up. Let's do something special for you. We're going to go with Merriam-Webster this week. So, circuitous is an adjective having a circular or winding course, a circuitous route, a circuitous journey by snowmobile. And then we also have not being forthright or direct in language or action, a circuitous explanation. His circuitous form of logic was mind-boggling. There's circuitously and circuitousness, but let's just leave it at the adjective. Let me see if there's anything. No, that's it. That's pretty much the way Oxford does it too. A route or journey longer than the most direct way. I like that one better.
Yeah, that's pretty slick.
Yeah, that's really...
It's not circuitous at all.
No, it's not. It's the opposite. That's probably an Oxford Languages joke. Hey guys, check this out. I'm going to do a really straight to the point definition for the word circuitous. Medieval Latin is the origin. Circuitous, it looks like. Circutus, which is a way around. Medieval Latin, which goes into circuitous, or in English, circuit. So in the mid-17th century is where circuitous came from. Boy.
This has been fun listening to you have to pronounce this 10 different ways repeatedly.
Yeah, well, then there's our show. No. Are you familiar with the Ngram viewer, the Google Ngram viewer?
No.
You know, when you look up a word, this is browser specific, there is a little bit where you show more at the bottom of your definition. And then there is a graph which shows you the usage in print over time. That is the Google Ngram viewer. A lot of usage in 1825 is when it peaked, went down in the 1920s. It kind of troughed, but then experienced a resurgence in the 40s, around the wartime, I'm guessing. And then now it's gone to its lowest point and seems to be making a little bit of a comeback, but not too much. I wonder what about the World War era is circuitous.
It had to be troop movements or something.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, you're talking about their routes or routes. Do you say routes or do you say routes?
I say routes.
Okay. I say both.
I kind of do too. I didn't want to admit that.
Whatever seems to annoy the other person most. That's the one you say.
Yes, exactly.
That is our definition. Is there something in particular you think about when you think about the word circuitous?
Conceptually, yeah, I think so.
Yeah?
I think the creative process. I was watching something, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a couple years ago. Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David were talking about writing for Seinfeld. And Jerry adamantly stated that they were like, why was it so successful? And Jerry, he adamantly stated that it was successful because efficiency was not the objective when they were creating the show. That wasn't the only thing. That wasn't the catalyst for my adoption of a circuitous creative process, but that definitely was one of the ingredients. You come from the news world, especially print media, which is not really that much of a thing anymore. When you get an assignment, they give it to you in inches, no euphemism intended. And they say, we need to fill about 6 inches tonight. Can you get us a story that'll do that? And they're literally talking about space on the page of the newspaper.
So they don't give you words?
No, everything was in inches, or sometimes they would say graphs, short for paragraphs. We need 6 inches, or if you can get, 9 graphs out of this.
Right.
I did that for about 8 years, and you're trained to make everything as efficient as possible. I think it really stunted me creatively for a long time, because sometimes you need to not know where you're headed.
Right.
You need to take that circuitous route through what you think you're making, but I think it all comes down to one principle, which I hold very close. Your project will tell you what it needs to be as you work on it. If you go into it with all these outlines and everything, you're going to ignore that.
Right.
You're going to say, no, you shouldn't be that because we outlined you as something. And you got to be willing to wander down some random paths once in a while. And
right.
It's hard to do in like AAA development. Project managers do not love that. They don't want you wasting any time on it. They want it right now. And you know what? It's a winning formula in a lot of ways. I know everyone points to Assassin's Creed and all these other franchises that don't really work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure, the original Halo was made with that mindset. Sometimes it does create good stuff, but I think for your personal development as a creative professional, it's important to wander down some winding paths every now and then.
Yeah, definitely. Your character or whoever you're writing this thing about, their journey is not always straightforward because that's kind of boring. And you being an English literature kind of guy could probably call my bluff on this, but it just seems boring if you just go point A to point B. It's about the journey for the character a lot of times.
There is a lot of that. You can divide fiction into two categories, essentially, which is
bad
commercial fiction. Sure, yeah. Commercial fiction and literary fiction.
Okay.
For the first 27 years of my life, I read nothing except for commercial fiction, which is the fun, really cool stuff. I mean,
give me examples of what commercial fiction is.
Like Harry Potter or
Robin Cook or any of the who did the Pelican Brief and whatever.
John Grisham
yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that half of the literary world at all. I love that stuff. Arguably my favorite writer is a guy named David Gemmell.
Uh-huh.
He just wrote the simplest, incredible stories about, warriors killing orcs and, the most cliche stuff in the world. But they were so well executed, and I love that stuff.
Yeah.
But I tried writing like that for a very long time. And then probably in my late 20s or 30s, I started just flirting with literary fiction. I have a degree in English, so they tried to force me to read it all in college.
Right.
And, Vladimir Nabokov and Borges and a bunch of other writers that I would now call masters. But in my late 20s or early 30s, I picked up Cormac McCarthy for the 10th time, and I was never able to get through Blood Meridian. I found it so unclear. And I'm like, I don't understand why this guy is really popular. And then I picked him up 2017, 2018. Maybe it was the stab wounds in Chicago that inspired this change. I started reading it, and if I didn't understand something, I would go to Google, and I found that these nebulous moments were him channeling Herman Melville or these other legendary writers. He would use a turn of phrase from Milton, and it's all very subconscious. It's hard to quantify, but when you caught the vibe of what he was trying to do, and you go back to Blood Meridian and you read it with that vibe in mind. Okay, this character represents the white whale, that destructive force of nature. Okay, that makes sense. And all of a sudden, the text, it takes on an almost biblical quality. I finished Blood Meridian, and I was like, how do you do that? I don't understand. There's no 3-act structure here.
So you read through it the first time and were like, meh.
I've had to read through it probably 2 or 3 times.
Gotcha.
And I would get halfway, and then a funny thing happens in the middle of that book where the main character just disappears for most of the book.
Because he went to the forum. Oh, wait. No, that's something different.
It's the most bizarre choice, but it's a reflection of how different literary fiction is than commercial fiction.
Right.
If you're reading commercial fiction and the main character disappears for the majority of the middle of the book without really explanation,
mm-hmm.
and then he just comes back, you're going to be like, what? How did the editors not catch this? But when you read it in something more literary, you're like, instead of how did the editors not catch this? It becomes okay, what did he mean by this? Why did he do that? And it almost engages you in a dialogue with the author.
Okay. Are there examples of contemporary literary fiction or authors that do that you can think of?
Well, I'm currently exploring the catalog of one that might be just the best that I've ever come across.
Okay.
I'm sure there are better. I'm sure people might disagree, but I'm currently reading a lot of Gene Wolfe. He's the author of the Book of the New Sun,
right,
among other things.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of the best of both worlds for me. This dude decided, what if I take fantasy and science fiction and I write it in that nebulous, elusive way that the literary figures do?
Right.
So you're reading this book and you're you have your swordsman and he's killing monsters in a forest and trying to save the princess and all that. But it's parallel to the Bible stories, and it's citing Gilgamesh And I mean, it's unbelievable how deep it goes. Yeah, it has just enchanted me. If you just want a good story, commercial fiction is definitely there, and I do still read it, but there's just something really powerful about the other half.
What is Tolkien?
God, that's a very good question.
Because that kind of takes, I don't know, it's its own history and its own people. And some of it's almost written like it would be just fiction.
And it is elusive toward Nordic mythology and a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it also has some biblical references in there that he relied upon, and he says it's also not an allegory for war, but I don't know how you would not make it one, having experienced what he experienced.
Yeah.
So I would probably say that's more literary, but what it did is it spawned decades of commercial fiction, which some of those progeny are genius. These world builders that Tolkien gave permission to are staggeringly good on the commercial side of things. But I might say, I'm not an expert, but I might say he's more literary.
The only story I would say, or a book that is the commercial one for me, was The Hobbit, and that is still my favorite. So
that's your favorite of Tolkien's works?
Yeah, it's not a common feeling, but that is. So.
I know the tone of my voice there was not accurate to how I feel. I also like The Hobbit more than Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
You're the only human to know that, other than whoever listens to this podcast.
Right. Nora. Nora and Andrew.
It'll be the four of us. I think The Hobbit is a wonderful story.
Yeah.
I read it probably once every year or two.
And what really got me into it was the animation. The one that everyone says is so horrible.
Mm-hmm.
My mother bought me a record. I never saw the animation, but I had this record that was basically the movie on a record and told the story. And it was, I mean, you know, just basically verbatim. They took what was in the movie and put it on the record, essentially. But I love that story.
That's very interesting. When I took my daughter home from the hospital the summer before last, there's this thing about babies you may not know, but you don't get a lot of sleep.
Oh, I thought it was.
It's a very well kept secret.
They bounce, right? I heard
What, babies?
Yeah, you can just drop them and they're boing.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And I encourage all the listeners to try it themselves.
With their own babies.
Yeah, don't touch other people's babies.
No.
My daughter and I, it was late one night, and she was awake, and so therefore one of us had to be awake, my wife or me. And I went out to the living room, and I was just searching HBO for something to keep me awake. And I watched that Hobbit animation for the first time in probably like 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
It was good, man. It holds up. It's a lot of it's nostalgia, probably.
I don't think a lot of people think that. They say it's horrible, and it's like, well, it's not the movies. I mean, that's not what you're getting there.
The animation is so storybook.
That's probably why Rock and Rule is in my favorite of animations too, if I think about it.
I have it pulled up in a browser tab on my phone, and I just need 2 hours to sit down and watch it.
It's got a lot of really great rock and 70s Cheap Trick and Lou Reed and Iggy Pop.
Oh, the story itself sounded amazing. Just the narrative.
And it's kind of got this post-apocalyptic vibe to it, but it's also got magic, right? Which is an interesting combo, I think.
You ever seen Ralph Bakshi's Wizards?
No, I have not.
What? How have I seen a movie that you have not seen?
I'm not omnipotent.
This is a first in all the conversations that we've had that I have seen a film that you have not. I don't recommend it, but that's beside the point.
Let me look it up. Wizards?
Yeah, by Ralph Bakshi, that Fritz the Cat animator.
Oh, okay. Because I saw the Washington Wizards play.
Were you impressed?
No, not at the time. Mm-hmm. I remember when they were the Washington Bullets. So
that's right. I still remember Jay Leno's joke when they changed the name.
What was his joke?
It was the Washington Bullets have decided that their name is violent, so they're going to change it to the Tacoma Bullets or something like that. The joke was that they're going to keep the name Bullets because Washington was too violent.
Yeah, that's the bait and switch. That's a good joke from Jay Leno. I like that. It was a very intelligent joke, I thought.
It stuck with me. It's been a long time.
From 1977.
Wizards, yeah.
No, I have not seen Wizard.
It's probably worth your time. Knowing your tastes, I think that you would get something out of it.
It looks pretty cool.
It's post-apocalyptic.
I like the cover. The cover looks like one of the guys from Joust, but it's not. He's holding a gun.
What's Joust?
It's an arcade game. You are on a big ostrich-looking thing, and other people are on giant ostrich-looking things, and you're supposed to knock them off. And you do that by hitting them from the top. Do you have a device available? It was a Williams game, arcade game. Very simple. But, I mean, I tell you, there's no turkey shoot.
Well, simple is the goal. I think people forget that.
And this was, you would knock them off their mounts. Sometimes there would be eggs that dropped that would spawn new. I call them ostriches because they just look like an ostrich. That's the way
I'm looking at one right now. That is an ostrich.
Yeah.
I also see what you're saying about the dude riding it. The red clad armored guy.
And that's kind of the way the poster looks to me, is that kind of. But yeah, I definitely want to check that out. So next time we talk, let's make sure we've seen each other's movies. We'll have a movie exchange.
And I really wanted to get Zardoz in, and I will do that.
Ooh, yeah.
The next one. So the next time we got to talk about Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
We got to talk about Zardoz and about wizards.
Okay.
And then I want to talk about the simplicity inherent in video game design.
Okay.
I think the biggest issue right now is a lot of game designers ask the question, how do I make this deeper and more nuanced, when they should be asking the question, how do I make this simpler?
I think that as far as simple and fun game mechanics, you can add the complexity in other ways. That's compelling. But the core game mechanics can be simple. The game doesn't have to be simple, but the mechanics have to be understandable and easy to pick up for anyone if you want any kind of popularity.
It's true.
Oh, you were mentioning commercial fiction authors. One of my favorite, I told you in one of our conversations that I had a hard time with natural dialogue between characters because it sounds like me when I read it.
Uh-huh.
And one of the authors that I really am impressed with the way he does this is Nick Hornby. And that's one of my favorite commercial fiction authors because it just sounds natural, and it's not anything super spectacular. It's just real language. Did you see High Fidelity or any of the movies that were adapted from his books, or did you read any of his books?
I've never read any of his stuff.
About a Boy. That was another one, which was also a sitcom. And he's an English author. High Fidelity was a pretty good movie, even though they kind of changed a few things. It's set in Chicago instead of in London. But it does translate really well, and I think a lot of that is due to John Cusack tweaking it. That's one of my favorite authors. I also like, speaking of commercial fiction, Bret Easton Ellis, for a completely different reason. That couldn't be more different, I don't think, as far as writers. But something about Bret Easton Ellis's stuff. Ever since American Psycho, my father, this is another my dad story. 3, if you're keeping score at home. My father recommended, well, he told me about it, and I was like, it sounded interesting. Just the whole concept of American Psycho, like commercialism and all this stuff. We were in Arizona on a vacation or something, right? And I went to a Walden Books and walked in there and picked up American Psycho, and she looks at me strange when I go to pay for it. And I said, oh yeah, my dad recommended this for me. And she was like, gave me one of those looks that was like, yeah, right. Okay, well, my dad is a little bit more progressive than you, I think. But anyway, but yeah, it was one of my favorite authors is him too. I like his stuff.
I've seen American Psycho the movie.
Yeah, never read it.
How's the book? No.
Oh gosh, it's just that you have to get through. Talk about circuitous. I mean, the stuff that Christian Bale says is written in even more excruciatingly painful detail in the book. They're whole chapters. And to make it a movie, you had to cut out some of the stuff. But man, it goes into the food, the descriptions of everything that you're wearing. And then also it had those chapters with Huey Lewis and the News and the different popular music artists. There is also a scene that wasn't filmed that I really thought was interesting. He goes to a U2 concert, and of course he's on drugs. What happens is the lights, they go dark, and it's just Bono, and he is Satan, and he's telling him he's doing a good job. That's basically that was the whole chapter. And it was really weird and bizarre. But what I really loved about the book was just kind of the whole message. It's like he tried to fess up. He tried to, and no one believed him because of his image. No one believed him that he did all these things, horrible things.
That was the story with like Jeffrey Dahmer had a victim escape, and the police brought the victim back to Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah.
As insane as that sounds from the book, I mean, stuff like that happens.
Right. So yeah, circuitous. So game development is circuitous in one sense, is it not?
I think it should be.
The last word that we did was on the word iteration. The route that you take when you do iteration is, in a lot of cases, a circuitous route. It's not direct like your waterfall development process.
That's pretty fancy that you're familiar with waterfall.
I work in software. It's a different kind of software, but it's still got some common things there.
Waterfall works as long as you're willing to swim up it every once in a while. The goal, I think, for any creative act that takes a while to develop, you need to constantly prove to yourself that you're going in the right direction. And if you fail to prove that, even if it's inconclusive, I think it's worthwhile to take a step back.
Is it you have to prove? Or do you mean like convince yourself? You don't mean that. You mean like prove to yourself in some way. Like if you think you're going the wrong direction, but someone sees the game and they give you feedback that you are, and it's pretty consistent, then you're going to take it that direction, right?
I mean, well, it obviously depends. If someone's like, this is the best co-op game I've ever played, and you're like, it's not co-op, I'm confused. Maybe back to the drawing board.
Right.
But before that game ever gets seen by anybody, it starts out in your head, and you have to get it onto paper, onto a screen. And during that process, you should always be asking yourself, like, is this fun? Is this capturing the experience that I wanted it to capture? And the problem with waterfall is the evaluation comes at the end.
Yeah.
Well, then you're done. The damn thing is ready for shipment. So you evaluate and you go, man, this thing isn't any fun. And marketing's like, well, we've already printed up all the boxes for it. So
Anthem.
We're done here. Right. Yeah. Essentially, yeah. Although Anthem probably got caught in an iteration cycle too. That was too long.
Yeah. I just meant an example of a product that they printed all of the boxes and probably not developed that way.
We're shipping this out.
Whether you like it or not. The creative process and the commercial part of a creative endeavor, they're not the same, but you have to merge them together in some way. Is that correct? Or
no, that's definitely correct.
If you want a successful game that's going to touch people or be viable, you can also create a game for yourself, right?
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say. You can just be creative for the sake of the act, and I think there's a lot of power in doing that. You can write for yourself. You can develop video games for yourself, even if you have no programming skills. Like the free version of ChatGPT can program a game for you if you just describe it well enough to it.
Oh.
And when I say a game, I mean your little stick figure man jumps over the lava. I don't think it would go much beyond that for ChatGPT, but you can do the creative act on your own. But when you try to capitalize on it, unfortunately, that's where the spreadsheets come in. Which, did I just take us back to the beginning circuitously?
You definitely did. Okay, so anyway.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I don't know where to go from there.
The end of the path, it's only the beginning.
Back to square one. Damn it.
Okay, so this is sort of a question. I met a new barista. I say he's new. He's not new. I go to a major coffee chain that may or may not rhyme with the word pucks, like hockey pucks. But anyway, I go there and I found out that this guy is developing his own game and he's kind of trying to figure out where to start. And he used to play this game that he described as part role-playing game, part escape room, part, and he, used to dress up with his friends and do this and play this game, and everyone had fun. He would like throw parties and do these things. And he wants to make a video game equivalent of it. I still don't understand exactly when he describes it. I look at him and I go, that could be pretty cool. But I still don't know what the shape is yet. I don't know the specifics. I know a lot of generalities. I've given him suggestions, like I know one developer that basically took a board game designer that's available on Steam and kind of mapped out the game there before starting with his buddies to build the game. It's kind of just a very basic sort of mock-up. I suggested that, but he doesn't have a starting point. He doesn't know where to start. I don't know if I tell him anywhere or if it's different. There are going to be 3 people, 2 programmers and then him. And they're going to use a game engine, but he doesn't know how to pick the right game engine to use. So anyway, does Christian, I think I asked this, did he make his own game engine or?
No, we're just using Unity.
Unity. Okay. What do you think is, well, maybe we just save this for Christian, but do you think that starting anywhere, outline, that's what I would do?
The goal is to create a prototype that puts your target audience, in this case it might be you, then you have to create a prototype that puts your target audience in the same decision-making headspace as they would be in a critical portion of your game. So let's take Cyberpunk.
Your favorite.
I know, it's top of mind and it's popular. Well, Cyberpunk. So what would a prototype have looked like for Cyberpunk? Well, they're a professional game development conglomerate, and they have a lot more resources than the average person does, but it might have been a wireframe 5-minute experience where you had to solve a hacking minigame and then either stealth your way into a building or slaughter the guys guarding the building. It was some combination of those things. And they may have asked people, does this make you feel like you're in a world that we've described to you?
Right.
And, if the answer is yes, then you build out from that. And if it's no, then you go back to the drawing board. So for Ben, what does a prototype look like when you don't have millions of dollars and a bunch of hardware and software? It can look like absolutely anything.
Anything, yeah.
It can be a freaking interpretive dance. It can be a flip book. It can be anything. What you're going for is you need to create something that compels a person to make decisions in a situation that reflects your gaming vision, because that's where we have fun. Anytime you look back on a game that you had fun playing, what you're nostalgic about, what you're remembering is either the planning that you did before making a decision, the execution of that decision, or the consequence of that decision. That's all a game is. It's just a series of those 3 things packaged together again and again and again and again. So for your barista friend, make something that does that. It can be, honestly, download Twine. It's free development software. It's text-based, but again, you're just trying to put someone in the headspace. You don't need graphics.
Based on what he was describing, it's a cooperative game that used to be played live. So maybe a video. Let's
say you're the audience here. You need to be able to make decisions because gaming is a participatory medium.
Right.
And, if it's a film or a comic book or whatever, sure, here's what I'm working on. You can show it to somebody. But because gaming requires participation, a prototype absolutely needs to incorporate participation somehow.
Yeah, I still need to know more about what it is. But I mean, you could kind of do that in clips. You can make it sort of like a tree. You're making decisions down a tree, or if this is going to be the game loop, here's the clip that describes this thing, and here's the clip that describes this thing, or it's whatever you want to make it. A pop-up book. I like that idea.
You're literally trying to capture a vibe. As stupid and as hippie as that sounds, you're like, does this vibe resonate in the way that I need it to resonate?
Yeah. Resonate is a good word too. I really like resonate.
That'll be the next one we do.
Do you want to do resonate? Because I think that's definitely applicable to our Cyberpunk 2077 blows conversation that we'll be having. I had fun with it, but how did you play the game? Because I played it all deck, went all the cyber route, the hacking.
Played it with the gorilla arms. I just made myself as brutish as I possibly could and just beat everyone to a pulp. And then it's been about a year, or God, it was before my daughter was born, so it's probably been about 2 years since I played it. But when did Phantom Liberty come out? I can't remember.
Oh, geez. Was it earlier this year?
It had to have been like 2022, early 2023.
It says here, Initial release date, September 25th, 2023. So last year.
Yeah, just about a year ago.
Yep.
Man, how did I
Did I say last year, or am I just making that up to sound impressive? I think it was last year.
I don't know.
Yeah.
We have it on record, though, so we can go back to the tape.
Let's go back to the tape.
I had the gorilla arms, and I had a God, what was the dang thing? It was an implant that allowed me to slow down time. So I would slow time, and I would just go crush everyone's head, and that carried me through the game.
I'm crushing your head. Crush your head.
It was very satisfying, I have to admit.
That's how you played it the multiple times through the same way?
No, I didn't.
No, seriously. That's
I didn't play it multiple times through. I saved strategically at different points.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I could branch in different directions. But so another game that I hated that everyone loved was
This is supposed to be about joy, man. Erik, this is supposed to be about stuff we love. But learning from those things is important too. You know what you like right now, and this isn't it.
So Cyberpunk the gameplay was at least compelling enough for me to be like, you know what? To combat any dissenters, I'm just going to get platinum on this. I think by the time I was getting ready to finish the base game, I had already stumbled into like 2/3 of the achievements.
Yeah.
And so I was like, what the hell? Let me go ahead and get the rest. But a game that I couldn't stand to play another second was Nier Automata.
Oh, yeah. Everyone loved that game so much.
It's one of the worst games I think I've ever played. And now that's not totally, there's context around that, because obviously I've played a lot of indie games that barely run. But in terms of a perfectly functional game with sensible design, it's one of the worst games I've ever played. We'll save the Nier Automata evisceration for the next one.
Oh, okay. We'll do that too. That's good. I'm in agreement. And there were a lot of people who just love that game, and it just didn't connect with me.
I beat it 3 times because you have to experience the whole thing.
Right.
And I beat it once, and I'm like, this game is terrible. And everyone online is like, no, you gotta keep playing. So I beat it again. This game is even worse than I thought it was. No, you gotta do it the 3rd time. And I beat it the 3rd time. And I'm like, I'm never spending another second playing this game. I hate it.
Let's talk about it on the next show, because I'm really interested. When I stop playing a game, it's because it just doesn't connect. And there may be a time in the future that I can go back to a game and pick it up again and enjoy it. I tried with Cyberpunk 2077 when the Phantom Liberty DLC came out, but it didn't hit the same way the second time. Even though there were some differences and they made some major adjustments, I didn't complete the Phantom Liberty DLC, but I did platinum the normal stuff.
They say you can't set foot in the same river twice.
And on that note, thank you, Erik, for joining us on this week's episode. Any words of wisdom on the word circuitous?
In the context of being a creative person, circuitousness is important. Stop oversteering and stop trying to make your work into something that it's saying that it doesn't want to be.
More of an organic kind of growth?
Yeah. And it may turn out to be awful. Who knows? But it'll be something unique, and it'll be something different.
And then the decision can be moving on to something new, or it can be, okay, well, let me take this other direction that I wasn't planning on taking to get to this end goal. And then it's also circuitous.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think, there's always a time and place to follow the plan. I'm a big planner in my day-to-day life, but I think if you're looking to develop as a creative professional, like your barista friend Ben, make no assumptions about the project you're working on. Let it be what it's asking you to be, and just follow that. Okay,
I will definitely tell him, and he's supposed to listen to the podcast. I don't know if he does or not. I was going to email some folks that I met who developed on Unity to answer any questions. Do you think Christian might be down for that if he's trying to figure out where to start?
Christian is one of the most eagerly helpful human beings. I'm sure you're going to get like a bulleted / numbered list about different things to download and different techniques for this and that. So
I have a lot of people like that in my life. This guy that I know, Jeff from Illinois, who spoiled my first kiss, by the way. It would have been my first kiss with the girl that I really liked.
Not with Jeff?
No, not with Jeff. But anyway, so Jeff, he was also underage, man. But Jeff, He's been doing this t-shirt design thing and drawing anime-inspired stuff for a very long time. And he's continued to do this. I mean, he's done comic books and such. And I asked him if he would talk to Andrew about what he uses for his designs and t-shirts and whatnot. He sent him a huge amount of information that he was like, okay. It's like, well, thank you. This is a lot. I got to take a little while to get through this, but yeah.
The world needs as much unique and expressive art as it can handle. So I'm all about that. If someone is interested in expressing themselves, I'm always like, yeah, man, let's figure out how to do it together.
Exactly. All right. Well, Erik, thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you, audience, for tolerating our circuitousness on this week's episode of the Too Vague Podcast. My name is Ben.
And I'm Erik.
And we've been your hosts. Have a wonderful night. Bye.